Hey there, and welcome to That Independent Streak. I'm Wendy Campbell, former radio personality, longtime mom, and seeker of stories always. If you've been looking for deeper conversations, maybe you're still working through, or you've started working through some of your, personal things, working on some issues, working to get kind of a healed place for yourself. Maybe you're just becoming. Maybe you're just bored and you like stories. This is a great place for you. Now, we like to dive in here. So we have a general attempt to focus on health, wellness, and travel, but sometimes we get a little bit sidetracked, which is a lot of fun because I like to talk about all the things. And so I hope you do too. Now, before we get into this particular episode, it's important to note that we actually recorded this quite a while ago. In fact, we dove in, had a great time, a wonderful conversation, and then life happened. There was a trip, and then there was a baby, and then the holidays, and really all those dumb excuses. I think the baby's the really good one, but all those excuses why you don't get your homework done. So I apologize in advance for keeping you from this amazing conversation. My guest tonight is Natasha Golinsky. She is a personal coach, a life coach, really more though of a business coach. She works in the space of small business owners, women who are looking to really step out of their space so that they can run their business, but in a way that really affects and grows them personally, really to give you more of that life work balance that a lot of people talk about, but most people really don't have, especially business owners. We start there and then we take a journey that I couldn't even have imagined would have happened. But it was really one of my favorite conversations, literally of the year. So I hope you listen all the way through. There's some really interesting stuff. We talk about human design. We talk about obviously solopreneurship. We talk about getting good life coaches and business coaches behind you as you're going through these changes in your life, some changes in your perspective, and really kind of the importance of understanding who you are and how you want to present to the world, which is a big task, but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it too. So if you listen all the way through and you have some thoughts and comments on it, please put it in the notes, in the comments, anywhere. If you want to find out more about Natasha, all her links are going to be in the show notes. Not to mention the fact that if you go to thatindependentstreakpodcast.com, you can get all of the information, the links, the show notes, the book notes, because there's a couple of books we cover here, and all of the information about human design. I will put that all right there for you and make it super easy. And of course, if you ever want to find me, I'm super easy to find on social media because I've just been there forever. So without further ado, Natasha Golinsky. So can you tell me your story and kind of how you got to where you are today?
For sure.
Maybe not early childhood, of course.
How far back do you want me to go?
Right?
So, let me see. Well, I was born in March. No, yeah, I mean, I definitely, I have run my own business essentially since I was 12 years old. I started a babysitting business and have run my own business ever
Me
since.
too. I had little business cards and everything.
Yeah, so I was very successful. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so I came with a lot of training. So I knew what I was doing, and I was very successful at that. And I've been self-employed or business owner since I was 12. I've never had a job.
Nice.
Well, some days I would have prayed to have a job.
Sometimes nice.
Sometimes nice. Maybe sometimes I was admiring, my partner, he works with a union and paid days off and benefits. And I was like, how do I work for you? How do I do that? How do I go drive a ready-mix truck with no experience? How do I do that so I can get some free vacation time?
Experience is a detail.
But no, I run my own business. A big part of that is because I have 3 teenage kids, now 3 teenage kids. At the time, obviously, we had 3 under 3. And so that was, I don't know how many kids you have, but it was a little bit of chaos. It was kind of like triplets. I wasn't like a reality show where I had 8 or 12, but I felt
feels like it.
Feels like, well, we have 3 taking naps and 3 in diapers and 3 car seats and 3 everythings. I was definitely not a happy parent at that point. I was really struggling to find my place amongst all the chaos. I had insomnia for 7 years, with all babies, and your body's out of whack, and then began chronic pain and all these exciting fun things. And then as my and then what happened was my ex and I, we split up about 5 years ago, and at that point I had to kind of become the main breadwinner, and I was like, oh my God, like I had sort of been like, I was more or less like, I want to say work at home mom, but not like I was running a business during the day and but I had never been the money in the family per se. And then so we split up and I was kind of like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do? And so I ended up getting a job at a restaurant as a 38-year-old working at among, I think my trainer was like 18 at the time. So that was very exciting.
Very centering, is it not?
Very it's very like my ego took a little bit of a but I had
It's
to,
where we are.
I had to figure it out, right? I
Right.
got really scrappy. I started teaching Spanish part-time. I was working at this restaurant. I was running my business. I was like doing all these things. I think I was like at the time I was like Airbnb-ing like every room in my house. And then sort of all in one, I ended up meeting my current partner. So he was like, "You're always busy." So I quit my restaurant job. And then the week later, our where we live, they told us they're like, no Airbnb allowed. So that was gone. The restaurant job was gone. I realized I was a terrible Spanish tutor and it left me with my business. And I was like, oh dear God, like how am I going to provide? I live in Vancouver, Canada. It's a very expensive city. I'm like, to like minimum wage is like six figures, like to just live in
Right.
the city. And so that year I actually ended up paying myself over $100,000 out of my business and working part-time around my kids. And yeah, so now I'm across that 40 mark. And now that my kids are bigger, this last year I started like working on a PhD, and now I'm decided I want to do some yoga teacher training, and so now it's like best is yet to come. Honestly, like it's so exciting. So
Yeah, I think once
never want to be in my 30s again. Like, oh my God, never.
no, people are always asking, do you want to go back to, would you go back to high school? Would you go back to your 20s? Would you? God, no. God, no.
No,
I
never.
barely survived the first time. Like, we're here now.
Yeah,
Like, let's make sure we stay on this
honestly,
path. Just
when I
make it
turned
better
40,
from where it's at.
thank God. Like, thank God. Like when I turned 40, I was like, oh, like decades closed. Like, let's start living my life now, right?
Right, right. But you bring up an interesting point, and I think a lot of people hit that 40 mark, and as they're rolling into the next phase of their life, because we now know we're going to live a long time. I think a lot of people realize, okay, well, I did all the things I was supposed to do before. Now I'm
Yeah,
in this place where either the kids are getting older or
yeah,
the moon has changed, whatever the reason being. There's a big pivot to go and
yeah,
really kind of evolve into something, not necessarily something else, but something more aligned, if you will, to
yeah. More
your thought
meaningful,
process and everything, more meaningful,
oh,
more
yeah,
more freeing, because a lot of people are feeling obviously less desire to be tied to a desk.
for sure.
um so I think the timing on everything is right.
Totally. 100%.
So explain to me what you're doing now and how you're managing things.
Yeah, well, like you said, like once you're at a place where I think kids are the biggest variable for me,
Mhm.
um, was that with you have three kids who can take the bus somewhere and they can have their own shower and make their own lunches, and you're just all of a sudden, like I realized last year, I was like, I've got all this time on my hands. Like I was kind of like it was really weird, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, I can start to live my life again. In a, not that I didn't love being a mom, and I'm still obviously a mom, but I was like, wait a second, I have so much time. And then, like you said, I really started wanting to do something a little more meaningful than, because by day I run a tech business.
Mhm.
I'm absolutely not a tech person. I just am the brains of the operation, but I could not code anything to save
I
my life.
love that. So what kind of tech business are you doing? Just like, can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I run a web design, web development business. Well, I do two things. I run a web design, web development business. I've been doing that for about 8.5 years. So we do really like fancy schmancy, custom, complex website projects. So e-commerce websites, web apps, kind of like our trifecta of clientele generally is like complex, custom, corporate. Like it's kind of like a very tricky level of website work. So we do that. And then because I had my kids around all the time, I basically built that business and on part-time hours, like I said, and paid myself, my income. And a lot of women I knew were like, how did you do that? Like, how do you run this business? Go to every volleyball game, do all this stuff, do all the mom stuff, basically run my business 25 hours a week. And so in the last couple of years, I've also been like business coaching for women in business, like how to manage your business such that you have the time to be the mom, be the partner, be the person, be outside of your career, right? And
Right.
without jeopardizing your income, without all of that. So I do two things kind of simultaneously, but So yeah, that's the tech question. And then, so
No,
that's
I
the,
think it's because a lot of people are like, okay, so you've decided to go on your own, but they don't
yeah,
understand exactly what you're doing to make that happen. And I think
exactly.
there's a lot of underground work, a lot of like you almost have to set the stage to build it up to get to where you want to go,
Oh
to
yeah.
move to that next phase. You can't just decide and go.
No, it took a long time. Both of them were like a long time in the making, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
just, it's like they say about an overnight success, right? It takes like 10 years.
Something like that, yeah.
The average overnight success was 10 years. Like, no, there's no magic, right? It's
Right.
plan, do, review over. No one knows what's gonna work.
It's totally true. Nobody, and it, especially I think a lot of us have learned over the last at least 3 or 4 years that life changes really fast
Yeah,
and you can't really count on anything. Like
no,
everything is
not
up
at
in the
all.
air. So
Not at
uh,
all.
when you coach businesses and coach women, what kind of coaching are you doing, and what kind of clientele are you working with?
Sure. Like generally I work with women who were kind of like where I was, in the sense of you have dependent kids, you're running a business, working 40 plus hours a week, but like your heart is kind of breaking because you're missing stuff with your kids. Your partner's like, WTF, when are you at home? Like, give me some attention, please, right? Like, you haven't worked out, you're not spiritually taking care of yourself. Like, your business is successful. It's like I like to explain, like, these are women who are probably solopreneurs, they run their own business, don't have a lot of skills in like hiring, management, training, delegation, system development. And basically, like, my goal when I meet a woman like this is like, look, let's get your work week down to 25 hours a week without jeopardizing your income or throwing your business under the bus. Like, let's get all the professional stuff done in 25 hours a week so you can have that personal life that you're dying for, right?
Mhm.
It's like I see women all the time, and sometimes they'll be like, "Oh my God, I think my husband is like, I think he wants to divorce me. Like I'm never around. I'm so distracted. I'm like, we're sleeping in different beds because I work so late, and like all this stuff,
Mhm.
right?" And so I was like, that's so unnecessary. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, your business does not have to monopolize your life to be successful.
Right.
So yeah, and I'm a true testament to that, because like the only work hours I had was while my kids were at school. Like, I did not have anyone else like covering me like when my kids were home, right? It wasn't like I had a husband who was home and he could cover the kids and I could work. Like, no, I had 9:30 to 2:30. That's it.
Right.
So yeah, yeah.
Are you finding that post COVID and post the lockdowns that there is a lot more people who are looking to align their path a little bit better to kind of take on a solopreneurialship and really go into that next step so that they, I mean, I know personally, and this is where the question is coming from, personally, like that whole experience kind of made me feel like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do all the things. I cannot live in fear of losing my job. I also
No,
cannot live in fear of not parenting correctly, because I think a lot of, I love that men are like, oh, I'm very helpful and I'm a parent and I'm involved with the kids. It never feels like the same, and
it's,
I'm a little judgy on this, never feels like the same kind of engagement, right?
yeah,
So women feel the guilt when they don't make it to the game. Women feel the guilt when they're not home to make
yeah,
dinner. Women feel the guilt when
for sure.
insert story here.
Yeah.
So are you finding that, post that, I think it really affected me in that kind of headspace. Have you
Mhm.
seen a lot more people coming in that direction and changing their space?
Like, in the sense of wanting to have their own business, or
Wanting to have their own business and really taking the leap to do it.
that's a great question. Like, everyone I know runs their own business, so it's hard to say. I don't really know anybody who has a job other than my partner, honestly. So
I
um
love your tribe. Can I just join your tribe?
honestly, I don't really know anybody like who has a job. Um, I think what I noticed about COVID, if I can sort of spin your question,
Sure.
is I think the fact of everybody having so much more time at home and that connected family time,
Hmm.
now that things are quote unquote back to normal-ish, there's this huge sense of loss that it is back to normal and they don't have that connected family time anymore. So
Hmm.
I think people, like, from what I can tell, like the entrepreneurs that I know, um, they're all like, how do we get that back?
Right.
Like, now kids are all back to all their activities and they are back to school and they're all with their friends, and it's not that we want it like it was in lockdown, because that was a disaster, but it's like we want to find more of that middle ground, right? Where it's like, okay, yeah, my husband isn't working 5, 6 days a week. I'm home, I'm around, and we're happy to be home because there's nowhere else to go. Like it's kind of, I notice in the women, like this morning I was on a call with like I'm part of this other women in business mastermind, and there was like 12 of us on the call, and the conversation was, yeah, like they want to be that type of mom but it's like you're getting pulled in so many ways. And it's like, how do we find that center again? How do we find that sense of like peace and ability to like focus without checking our phones, without constantly thinking about our goals and our year end and our like, ugh.
Right. Right. So are you finding that you're also a bit of a spiritual guide as well? Because I feel like there's a lot of centering that you have to coach people through.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Oh, I'm like as woo as it gets. Like honestly, like it's I run a very pragmatic technical business by day, but in my like outside of work, I am like, you name it, I'm like into it
Well,
for
tell me
sure.
more. Tell me so much more.
Like,
I think honestly, like the older I get, and I've always kind of been a little bit on the woo side anyway, but I think the older I get, the more I feel like you do need to align. You do need to eat well
yeah,
because you need to think well, and to think
yeah,
well and to feel well, you need to exercise well, and you need
oh yeah,
to, you do need to stimulate yourself in a job and a career and a world. And but
yeah,
you also kind of need to navigate that through a why perspective. Like what's
100%.
your depth?
I would agree with you 100% that it's like people are holistic beings, it's
Mhm.
like mind, body, spirit. Like there's no way to separate. There's no way to separate because if you're not sleeping well, like I know for me, having was an insomniac like again for like 7 years, when you're not sleeping, you're emotionally in a disastrous spot. Your productivity is affected. Your like energy, your relationships are affected. Like because you just don't want to go out and you don't want to have sex and you don't want to do all these things that are like, and your life starts to fall apart. And then if you have chronic pain, that hugely affects all these things. So it's like they're all connected. It's like we think, okay, I'll build my business now and I'll focus on my health later. It's like, yeah, well, it doesn't work like that all the time.
Right.
So I really am of the mindset that success is not a revenue number. It is not a number in the bank. It's the whole thing. So to me, it's like when people ask me like, okay, well, what does success mean to you? I'm like, success is living a life you love. So whether that means you make 50,000 or 500,000 or 5 million, like whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's not that. It's like, how happy are you in your life? And because you can have all these metrics, quote unquote, that they tell you equals happiness and success, but you can feel terrible. But it's like in terms of certain things, like I'm very much into fitness. For me, it's about stress management. Like for me, I'm a very kinesthetic person. So for me, like being active and movement, I love dancing, I love yoga, I love fitness, I love like whatever, I like all types of anything movement. I love it. I love hiking, I love everything. But to me, it's like my body, it's like I'm honoring my body. Like my body lets me go to work. It lets me do all these things. So it's like me reciprocating to my body that needs this movement, that needs this break, that needs the fresh air. It's like I think it's like I'm shifting my focus to, okay, body, what do you need right now? Like what would make you feel good? Like thank you for today. How can I honor what you need? Right. So I
Mm-hmm.
look at it like in some ways, like my physical body is like a third entity that needs me to take care of it, right? So it's not like, oh, eat whatever, or well, I'm lazy, I don't want to. So
I
I don't know.
like that though. I like the separation concept because the separation allows you to nurture without guilt, right?
Yeah,
So again, being a woman, I don't know where the guilt comes from. Maybe it's the
I
Catholic
think it's
upbringing.
intrinsic.
Maybe it's
Like
being I don't know. But
I have a theory, but I don't know.
yeah, we can dance into that theory. But I think, when you start separating it out as, what does this external thing need? It's
Yeah,
more allowing for the time and the energy and the space that it requires. Like you hear a lot of people that are talking about like self-care and self-therapy,
yeah,
and they're great concepts, but they're very they sound indulgent. You know what I
mm-hmm.
mean? And so it's almost like, well, it's almost like the chocolate cake. Okay. The
Yeah,
chocolate cake is very indulgent, and I shouldn't participate in that too often because
yeah,
it is way too indulgent. Right.
yeah,
So I think, there's that connection and disconnection of the self to
yeah.
really open the door and really give you that opportunity to really dive deeper.
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
I'm
definitely
just
that,
pulling
yeah,
this
that's
out
the
of the air.
physical piece. Yeah, I think that's just the physical piece. It's like I was working with this energy healer because a couple of years ago I was like really, really not in a good spot. And I was so depressed and I started working with this energy coach and she was very like channeling spirits and a psychic and whatever. It just so happened I met her through a friend and I didn't believe in psychics. I didn't believe in any of that. So I was just like, whatever, can you help me not feel so sad all the time, right? And she taught me about that. And she's like, no, she's like, your body takes care of it, lets you do your thing. And now so I look at it every day like, okay, what am I doing for my body that supports me all day? Like, how do I reciprocate? Like, it's not about whether I want to, it's like my body needs movement, it needs air, it needs stretching, it needs like, so I don't know, I look at it very much like I have to take care of it. Like, even with my I have 2 teenage sons and 1 teenage daughter, and it's like we have conversations about alcohol and like we just have these
Mm-hmm.
conversations. I'm like, your body is a gift. Like, you don't, like, if someone had to buy organs and all parts of your body, it'd be like millions of dollars, and here you have it. Like, your body can't take care of itself, you have to take care of it. And so I don't know, to me that paradigm really helps me a lot. Like, I've been entrusted with this physical spirit container, and it's like I have to like do my best to honor it. So yeah, it's like the proverbial, it's like your temple, right? But I don't know, I like to look at it like it's your spirit container. It's like, because who we really are is who's on the inside, right? It's not,
Right.
yeah, okay, I'm this and I look like this, but that's not who you are. Like, you are a being inside of this container that just looks like this because your parents look like this. Like, you don't really get a say
Mm-hmm.
in what your body is, unfortunately. I mean, how you
I
take
mean,
care
you
of it.
can, but I don't know that I
Well,
recommend it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting,
yeah,
the spirituality of it and, caring for your soul is a different conversation if
no,
you look at it from the perspective of energy doesn't die. And when
no,
you die, your energy is still there. So what's more
yeah,
important, your body or your spirit? And
this is
then, how do you connect with that and how do you commune with that with other people? And it's out there, but it's not out there. You
I
know
don't
what I
think
mean?
so at
It's
all. I just think it's
yeah.
a fact of life. Like, and I think whether someone believes in reincarnation or not, I mean, I'm not, I have no opinion. I'm like, totally possible. I was raised Catholic, so I had to like undo all that learning over the last, 10 years of my life. But it's like, yeah, it's like I look at it like we are, I don't know if you know a lot about like human design. Do you know much about human design?
Tell me more and I'll tell you what I know.
Okay. So human design, this is something that for me was like totally a game changer. If I had to say one thing about being 40 plus that has been the highlight of this season so far, I'm very much like, I don't know about you, but like I love strengths assessments, personality assessments. Like, I love all of that. I really love to like figure stuff out.
Mhm.
And so to me, it's the same energy lady. She was like, you know what? I think part of your reason that you're struggling is because of da da da. And so human design is very much kind of like I don't even know the word how to the word for it, but it's like it's under the astrology family. And the theory of human design is that depending on when you were born, where you were born, the time you were born, there were certain alignment of planets. And as I say this out loud, it sounds very silly, but to me, and it's like that kind of created what they call your like energy blueprint.
Okay.
And so there's all these different energy types with these different sub variables and things like that. And I personally, before this, thought astrology was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life. I was like, how possibly would that affect a person by the planetary whatever? I
Mhm.
thought it was so dumb. Like, I knew that I was a Pisces, but I'd never paid attention. I was like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, so I had my chart. They call it your chart. Someone ran my chart, and they sent me this document that was like 50 pages about my thing. And I read it, and I was like, this is literally a book I could hand to someone about me.
Oh, I
Like,
want one. Where do you get this?
shocking. Like,
I mean,
we'll talk after. But I was
okay.
like blown away, and I was like skeptic. I wasn't like one of these placebo people who looked at it and was like, oh my God, yeah, that's me. It's like, this is dumb. This is dumb as hell. Like, I shouldn't say that. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your podcast, but
You can
it was
swear all you
like,
want. We're friends
I
here.
read it and I was like, Oh my God. Like everything in my life I'd been to therapy for was like this type struggles with this. And I was like, oh my God. And then it was like the strengths of this particular profile of me and all the different combinations of whatever's. It was like, this is what I do for a living. Like, how do I, and it was just so bizarre. Anyway, so I really started learning about what they call your alignment. Like they literally, it's like deconditioning yourself so you can be more aligned to this design, like this human design, right? So over the last year or two, I've been like really learning so much about human design, about my particular type, and how to remove what doesn't serve me per my type and focus more on the stuff that I knew was there, but I've never really given myself permission to do. And it's been seriously life-changing, like just giving myself permission to not do so many things that I hated. That was, now I know why I hated it. And then now giving myself so much more permission to lean into the things that are aligned for me that I was doing anyway and I enjoyed, but I was always kind of clouding it with all this other stuff. And so I think that's honestly been my biggest joy of being like in my 40s is like that freedom to be like, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to pretend I enjoy this. I'm not going to like pretend I can be this person that I was trying to be, thinking that version was better. And so that's just been so freeing to me. And then I'm taking yoga teacher training right now, which has been amazing. And just for fun, like I have no intention to like build a yoga career, but just again, that spiritual side, right? Like the philosophy of yoga, that philosophy of like yoga as a philosophy, not as a class on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, right? Like
Right.
it's because I've
Like
done
the
yoga,
practice of yoga as
the
opposed to the
practice of
action of
yoga,
yoga.
yeah.
Yeah.
The philosophy, like the life of yoga. Like yoga is I'm going to say culture, but it's not a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's a philosophy. It has all these layers, right? And we all know, let's go to a yoga class, but that's only one piece of the yoga pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the movement piece, the other 7 are not movement at all. So it's fascinating. So just, yeah, really doing this deep dive into creating more peace, more joy, more harmony, more alignment.
Can I circle back on a few things? Because I
Yeah,
have
please.
way more questions. Okay. So,
Take your time.
on the human design,
Yeah,
can you tell me some things that you realized that you hated and things that
sure.
you changed and what
Yes,
was kind of the context of it?
sure.
Because I think that's really interesting and mostly stemming from astrology has always been an interest of mine. And then you started like it wasn't until like a few years ago I started diving deeper into astrology and north nodes and everything else. And then I was like, you know what? 12 little subsets of the universe for all people makes no
Yeah,
sense. But when you start
yeah,
aligning, like getting deeper into it, then it starts making a little bit more sense and there's a little bit more justification for it.
yeah,
Whether or not, whatever your creed is, it still aligns a little bit because we all
yeah,
are made out of stardust, right?
totally.
So yeah, tell me what you learned about yourself that kind of made you change your path and what you did.
Sure. Um, I have always felt very, what's the word? I've always felt very inadequate by being an introvert. Like I am not shy. I have zero stranger danger. I will talk to anybody. I have no fear of, I'm absolutely not shy,
Mm-hmm.
but I am the quintessential introvert where I process internally. I need away time to recharge. Big crowds stress me out. Christmas, Thanksgiving, concerts, like community events, lots of people, lots of noise. Like it's very hard for me. And I've always felt so ashamed of that. Like I always felt like, what is wrong with me? Like I grew up in this big family. They're all like chit chat at Thanksgiving. And I'm like, don't even want to go. And then I'm like, have no interest in having friends over. Like I have friends, but I'm like, it doesn't, I'm not driven by social connections, for example. And like my sisters, like I have one sister and she was like in a mom group when she was pregnant and she has like, she's in this wine club and a reading club and she has her girls' night and they have wine. And I'm like, I would die. Like I would die. Like, and I've always felt so embarrassed about that. Like what is wrong with me that
Right.
I'm not that type of woman. Like I'm not the go to a play group and chat with the moms type of mom. Like I'm just not. Like it always would make me so sad. And I don't know why. And I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't deal. And then I never had birthday parties. I never like, and I always thought something was seriously broken with my personality. And but for example, so in human design, I'm what they call a projector. It's a type. It's called being a projector. And it was saying this is textbook of a projector. Like they feel energy from everyone around them, and it makes them so tired and so overwhelmed, and they don't have that like filter like some people do. Like it kind of comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like until they learn how to like create this filter of like you and me energetically, like, so I'm not going to take, like, if I have a friend who calls me about this situation she's dealing with her husband, I'm like, I will start to cry. You know, like it's this layer of, and used appropriately, it's an incredible tool, right? That's what makes me an excellent coach, is because I can connect like with my person very intentionally, and I know them, I can feel where they are, and I can like immediately connect very deeply and almost psychically read where they are. So but it's like knowing how to turn it off, right? So for example, like in my business, I remember like 2 years ago, I paid like $50,000 and I joined this like coaching program, this high ticket mastermind coaching program about how to grow my business. And when we got into it, the strategy of how they build these businesses was Facebook. And literally in my first week, I was like, this is not going to work. Like, I cannot, like, even now, personally, I don't use Facebook. I don't use social media for my personal life. I just can't handle it. Like, I can't handle all the,
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of input.
it's a lot. But for some people, they're like, like, like my partner, he's just like uses Instagram, like, oh, look at this. I saw this video. And I'm like, he'll start showing me stuff and I'll like want to cry. I'm like, it's too much. Like, it's too much. So for me, when you're asking like what I changed, is I gave myself permission to not market my business using social media. Like I cannot handle it. And I remember like I called my coach, the same lady, and I was like, I just paid $50,000 for this training and I cannot execute. I know I will not be able to execute. And she's like, walk away. I'm like, it was $50,000. Like I can't just walk away. And she's like, how do you feel when you're learning that curriculum? And I'm like, I feel like I want to die. And I'm like, I just cry. And I was seeing a therapist for this issue because I couldn't handle it. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Do I have social anxiety? Like, what's wrong with me? And so, no, my coach, she was like, walk away. It's fine. She was like, write it off, business write off. Don't worry about it. So, literally, closed the curriculum, never went back. And I just gave myself permission to like be honest with myself. Like, you cannot handle it. But for me, in a culture of everybody shares everything and social media is like the go to, I felt like an idiot. And but when I got honest with myself, like my energy type cannot process this much without being seriously overwhelmed. I just learned how to market my business in a way that was appropriate to my style.
Right.
And it works so much better without the drama, right?
So
But
how are you marketing your business without Facebook and social media?
I do, for example, like I love to write. So I do like content marketing, but my assistant does all the out.
Nice.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I'll do the
Mm-hmm.
reading and I'll do the writing and I'll write the content and then I send it to my assistant and she can do the editing and the hashtags and the images but I don't have to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can do the creation and the thinking, but it's like as soon as I feel the so many voices, it just throws me off. Where some people are very energized like that. Like my best friend, she's a content creator on TikTok, has 1 million followers. She loves it. She loves the chit chat and the comments and the trolls. And she like sends love to the trolls. And she loves it. She gets paid to create content and create conversations. And so for her, it works. And I always feel so bad because I look at her and I'm like, what is my problem? Like, why can't I do that like you? And I just was just so mean to myself that I couldn't. And I tried. And I just admitted
it actually sounds like you're super empathic, and
yeah.
that barrier. I mean, so in, my past life, I was a broadcaster,
Yeah.
which puts me in a padded room for the better part of like the day, right? I'm in a room talking to myself, much like I am right now, because this is my happy place.
Yeah.
But I would go out to do events with the station and
Mhm.
I could do them and I'd be fine. And I'd talk to the masses at shows, and I'd interact with the community, but then I needed to go back and recharge. And I still do that, where I can be out and out and out, but then I need to come back and kind of
Yeah.
self-heal for a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely. Empathic is a big part of it for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I've really learned is this, it's like, it's not a bad thing. It's just you got to be careful of how what you let in.
Energy vampires.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's like, or it's not even like, it's like if I go to my son's graduation ceremony, I'm gonna kind of sit on the side near the back. Because like me being in the crowd with all those people elbow to elbow, I feel very like smothered and suffocated. So, but it's kind of like the growth for me was like giving up feeling bad about it. Because
It's a
I
gift.
it took me 40 years to get to a point where I'm like, why am I not dot dot dot? And
Mm-hmm.
then for me anyway, through learning human design, I was like, it was like, this is your number one red flag of this type. Like it was right there. These people cannot handle or do not handle well. And I was like, oh my God. So to me, it was so validating and so freeing that I was like, it's okay. It's okay that I'm not that. Someone else can be that. I can do
Right.
this.
So when you dive into like human design and you start, learning more about it and learning
Yeah.
how they come to the science of it, if you will, but the thought process of it, and the explanations of everything, where does it draw from? Where does it come from? Like, is it esoteric thing learning that people are learning over time and intuiting, or is it, in grow up Catholic, you got the Bible, here's your rule book, go.
Exactly. Yeah.
you know
No, it's a great question. It's like, and that's I don't know how to give you the correct answer for that. It's like a system. It's like this built out like full thing. Once you research it, like if after this call you kind of go jump and Google
Oh,
it,
it'll
it's
happen.
a big deal. It's like a big thing. Like I had no idea because I'm just not into that whole astrology. I wasn't into it. But I think it's like a system. The backstory of it, from what I know, and I haven't again spent a ton of time reading the history of it, was that it was channeled by the documenter. Like if you've read Course in Miracles, at Course in Miracles, there's no author. It was like a channeled work, right?
Right.
So I think human design was the same thing, where it was like a channeled idea that became this system that for some of us really identify with. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know not everybody would believe this and they think it's insane, but to me,
That's
it
fine.
really helped me. Yeah, and whatever, everybody's got a
Yeah.
thing, right? So to me, this was like a life-changing experience. So, but no, I think it's a channeled, I want to say channeled system, but system's not the
Mm-hmm.
right word. But
I understand.
yeah, yeah,
So when you went through this and you started like making tweaks and changes, did
yeah,
you come to a point where your chronic issues were going away?
yeah, 100%, like 100%. Like I found that I could, to me, it was just giving me permission to like to trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like if I felt this is a no, to be okay with no, this is a no. Or if something was like a yes, okay, to trust. Like when I was registering for yoga teacher training, I'm like, I don't want to teach yoga, but it felt like really the right thing to do.
Right.
And so I registered to teach yoga, to take this 200-hour training program. And as soon as my first class, I was like, yes, this is exactly the right spot. And so it's kind of like learning that, like I think as an entrepreneur, there's so much noise about what it means and what it takes to be successful. Or as a parent, this to be a good mom, it's this, and to be run a business, it's this, and to be an athlete in a great body, it's this, and to be a whatever. And it's like, no, not true. There is no one way to do anything.
Right.
So I think it was just kind of that permission. I know I've said this a few times, but it was like giving myself the permission to be like, no, it's okay. It's like the way my strengths are, it's okay to own my strengths and to really like accept the weaknesses as well. Because I was,
Mm-hmm.
as a high achieving person, I was always like, beat it down, like I don't care, like to myself, like in the sense of if you're scared of this, face your fears. And
Mm-hmm. Dive in. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, and it's not, and I just realized like pain does not equal good.
It's true. It's interesting though, because it's almost like there's a collective push, one, to do the things that you hate to do because other people are doing them.
Yeah,
So I'm not a big fan of, and I it was kind of one of the things I promised myself when I decided to start doing podcasts. I am not a hack person. I don't care what your
no,
5-minute hack is to anything.
I
I
know me.
just I really feel like people are different, but we're all kind of connected. So it's
Mhm.
important to kind of learn about other people and learn kind of learn more about them to figure out who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But you don't
exactly.
need to steal their ideas. You don't need to be them.
Oh, I
Um,
hate that 10 steps to
yeah,
do. It's like, oh my God. Like,
yeah.
no,
I don't
no.
need a 15-year-old telling me how to life hack my 50s. So we're good. We're good. But I think it's important though, because you talk about permission a lot, and
Yeah,
there is a barrier that is ingrained deeply when you're a child. You have to get permission to do things. You have to, at least as a woman, I feel like the girls had that more than the boys did, right?
yes,
So before you go make that decision to try anything, to do anything, you had to get the permission first. And so it's
yeah,
inherent kind of to allowing is a big piece of it.
totally.
um I'm wondering, as far as your clients go, how much of this it gets incorporated, because I think it's really valuable. I just am curious, like
Oh, yeah,
if you're building a business, and especially as a woman, I think women have the gift of intuitive nature, right?
definitely.
So men may have it, but they have it in a different way. Where if you can start tapping into that, it does open a lot of doors, because it does empower you in a really strong way.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
So are
So
you
is it,
finding that with your clients?
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I think like one thing I've always done without knowing I was doing it, and this is another thing that was identified by my design, is in human design, I'm what they call like a splenic projector. And a splenic projector is basically someone who, what they call your authority. Your
Mhm.
authority is my intuition. So, and I would say over the course of my entire life, like my mom would tell you, like since I was 3 years old, I was the kind of person who was like, like looking at like what's the story behind the story. Like if I could, if I met somebody, and I remember talking to my mom when I was like a little kid, I'm like, I think she's really lonely. Or like you can kind of hear what's not being said, right?
Right.
And so, and the one thing I'm another woo-woo thing I'm like working on right now is like developing psychic ability, but not psychic like, oh, I see dead people, but it's like
Please no.
psychic is like a psychic is like we all, the book is like we are all psychic, we can all sense things, but it's like developing that and some types of psychics are mediums and they can like channel, and some people are not, and some people psychic people they can like smell certain things, or they can see certain things that aren't there, they see auras or whatever it is, and they're like every person to some degree is psychic, and I would say for me, um I have an ability to like look at someone and be like, like, okay, you're saying this, but I know that that's not the case. Like, I know that that's not the case. Like, and so I find it's very helpful, like that intuitive spiritual part where it's like, okay, yes, I'll hear what you're saying and I'll consider what you're actually saying, but I'm going to read your face and I'm going to read your body language and I'm going to like trust my gut instincts on this. And I'm going to read you if you let me. Like, I'm going to like, I can kind of feel myself like creating this lock, like I'm like, okay, let me, and they say that about projectors, like projectors that can be like, oh my God, look away, like, oh my God, like you're stressing me out, right? Like people, we do that, right? We like
Right.
lock in and without even knowing we're doing it. But it definitely helps in coaching because coaching is all emotions. It's all like, it's not mechanics. Like, okay, yeah, okay, let's imagine like if I do coaching for moms in business who are working too much, well, why are you working too much? Maybe you don't want to be home. Like maybe you feel inadequate because your dad abused you. Like you don't know. Like it's not like, oh, I'm so busy. It's like, yeah, well, why are you so busy? Like
Mhm.
how does this pay off? How is this paying off for you? And then kind of creating that, because even in the sense of like, yeah, okay, I help people work less, but I'm not a productivity trainer. I'm not a time management trainer. I'm not like you. I'm not a hack person, 5 ways to find 5 hours. Like I'm not that person. It's like, okay, what has kept you from hiring somebody for the last 5 years? What has kept you from hiring a housekeeper and your house is a mess and you have the money? Like, what's the, like, what, or, and you start to have this emotional conversation and, like I had this conversation with this lady and she was so afraid to be the boss and take charge and hire people. And I was like, well, and we started talking. I'm like, well, that's because you have an attachment disorder. And I don't know if you know anything about attachment disorders, but she had, as a kid, been bullied by her parents and she felt she had no voice and no authority. And she was so anxious about confrontation. And it was this learned behavior from when she was a little girl. And I'm like, you have an attachment disorder. You need to see a therapist and heal this, and then you will be able to be a leader. You know, like, so it's like stuff like that. It's not just like mechanics, like you got to be tough.
Yeah, right.
No, you can't be tough if you have an attachment disorder. Like, it's not going to happen. It's hardwired into your nervous system to fall back. Right. So,
Right. What
yeah.
else have you learned? Like in the human design, what other types are there?
Okay. Well, there's, again, I only know the most about my type, but there's a type called generators, manifesting generators, reflectors. Like, there's different types. And it's, if you go, there's a website. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed
No,
to
I'm going to
say
go check it out. Don't worry.
but
I'm in.
different ways to get your free chart, and I can message you after, but they can give you the chart. I literally just, hang on, let me grab it. Like, I did one for my kids, and basically it's like, you get like this kind of little reading, right?
Right.
And then, so, and then there's like, all I did when I was learning was I got my chart. It was free. I got my type, and then I went on YouTube and I learned, binge watched everything about my type.
You've just defined my Friday night. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Welcome. And then, like I said, and then I did this deeper dive where I got this like booklet about, no, this is more. So I just, again, I was shocked how precise, for me, how precise it was.
I get fascinated, you know, like you said, to the personality types. I get fascinated because I'm ultimately fascinated by what motivates people. And if I can find out what motivates me, then I can kind of intuit what's motivating everyone else.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think it's fun, but it's also really interesting because it takes you to that next level. It almost levels you up a little bit.
And it helps you be you, you know, like it helps you, because if you do follow the theory that we are created for a purpose, and I don't believe in purpose like you're a baker and you're a car driver. Like, no, like I don't believe in an occupational purpose. But if you believe that we were created the way we are to serve in a specific capacity, then it makes sense to me to like, how do I capitalize on this? How do I figure out like who I am versus who I'm not? And I mean, it's obviously like, there's going to be, someone might look at it and they just reject it, right? And to me, I look at it like, this is a very helpful tool. Am I going to take all of it? I don't know. I'm going to take what resonates with me. But so far, so good. Like, I haven't had anything that have sort of really not made sense to me. But it's like, I look at, okay, like if I am divinely created following that theory, then I feel like it is in my best interest to let's look at that. Like, like, is there a part of my nature that I'm not even looking at that it could be? Is it like, and vice versa? Is there a huge part of like your shadow self of who am I pretending to be and trying to be that's just not in the cards for me? No matter if we're trying to be that for 40 years, like it's not going to happen.
Did you read anything in it that didn't align?
Let me think. I gotta think for a second. One thing that it says a lot is that because of these, it's not that it didn't align. Let me think. It's like they say that this energy type is, my particular energy type is someone, they're always tired because of all this in and out, right? And I think I would have, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, but I think because without knowing it, I've always only worked part-time. Knowing I was introverted, I didn't kind of like, I was really trying to be careful. And I think if I hadn't, I'm like way more energized now, but I think if someone wasn't paying attention, like for me, I personally don't always feel tired, but I think if I'd gone back 5 years to how I was living then, yes, I would have felt tired. But now, because I think I've made those little tweaks, that without knowing about it, it just kind of put me in a place where, okay, I live my life in a more restorative way now than before. But I have to think about it. But honestly, for me, like so far, like one part of my morning routine is I have this book, and I just read a little bit about human design, and then I write a journal entry like to myself about it and my reflection on this, and yeah, it just challenges your thinking. You're like, because it's like, it's saying like the world is created for this particular type, where my particular type is less people. So it's like, you're the outlier in this societal structure, in the sense of like, where most people are very action driven, they've kind of have that ability to go. a projector type doesn't. Like, we're just
It's
not like that,
interesting.
you
Has
know?
it
So
changed? So I
yeah,
noticed like the more I learn about things like, like human design or,
yeah,
anything really, I noticed that as a parent, and I've got two olders, two,
yeah,
they're 27 and 26. I've
yeah.
got a 9-year-old at home, and then
Oh,
I've
wow.
got one and nearly two grandchildren. So
Aw,
I've kind of watched myself evolve as a parent over time
yeah,
because I started really young, right? So I can see kind of
yeah,
the evolution of my growth and how it's changed into how I
definitely.
raise my children. Have you noticed a lot of changes in how you're parenting?
That's a great question. I would say the spin-off for me of human design as a parent is that I'm more calm and I'm a lot more fun because I'm not burning energy trying to be something else.
Right.
I feel like I'm way more aligned knowing what kind of mom I'm going to be and what kind of mom I'm not going to be. Like, I'm not going to sit and play video games. I'm just not going to do that. But you
Never.
know what? Like, I'm just not. Like, I always felt guilty. Like, I remember seeing a therapist and being like, I'm a bad mom. I won't play video games with my kids because just whatever, it makes me dizzy and like whatever.
Mhm.
She's like, there's other ways to be a good parent other than playing like NASCAR video games. And I was like, okay. So I kind of have just been conscious to, so for example, like another thing with like a projector type, it's like if we have way too much going on, we're going to shut down instead of being energized. We're going to be kind of like overwhelmed. And I used to get really chronic migraines and like so like days at a time I'd be in pain, couldn't like walk, couldn't work, like so bad. So now it's like I get help. My son walks the dog, my son makes dinner, my daughter like unloads the dishwasher. Like I've really put these pieces in place, so I'm not trying to be a hero and be a
Mhm.
super parent. And I think that was the thing, because I think a lot of women, they like feel more validated when they're trying to be super parent, and like they feel like they're doing a better job the busier they are. And so I think again, just permission. I gave myself permission to be like, I'm not in the running for this award anymore. Like,
Right.
I don't know
Right.
who gives that award,
Right.
but I'm like taking myself out of the running for that award. And I'm going to be aligned to how I best function
Mhm.
and it's Mel,
Mhm.
and so I can whatever. And it's been so much more better for me. It's better for them. So yeah, I think calmer, more collaborative parenting style, I would say.
Mhm. I think it's interesting. So as a coach, I think you offer a unique variety of perspectives, which is great. I mean, that's what you want when you go to someone to help guide you through whatever it is. Is it starting
Yes.
a business? Is it, migrating from a business to a solopreneur? Is it, whatever it is? I think that perspective, the more perspective you have, the more you have to offer.
Yeah.
But do you have a preferred client type? Do you have a, like, if people are listening and they're looking for someone to kind of guide
Yeah.
them through those steps, um, do you have a preference?
Definitely. Like I would say my ideal client is a professional solopreneur, small business, self-employed person.
Hmm.
Um, Generally, they are going to be mid to late 30s, early 40s, kids, school age kids. They are working 40 plus hours a week, married, um, and just feeling overwhelmed with how much is going on and not
Hmm.
sure what to do. So making good money. So the money part of coaching is not the thing. The problem is time,
Right.
like time, like constantly feeling fried and anxious, like burning, like, so I would say that that's definitely my best person. It just kind of turns out generally that someone like me is like, they might not know they're what they call a projector, but they're probably more like a projector, because projector people, we're unwilling to do the 50-hour weeks just because we're going to get migraines and it's not going to work. We're not going to be happy with that, right? It's not going to work for our quote unquote energy type. But if someone doesn't know they're a projector, then, but just per this conversation, it's probably someone who, like me, could not handle tons going on and tons of demands and tons of long days and things like that.
I
So
would imagine there's a lot more people joining your camp here over the last couple of years.
yeah, I mean, it just depends, because I'm in a mastermind with a lot of other women and they're like, I want
Mhm.
to make $1 million, and you're like, go for it. Like, so that's not my market, like I'm
Right.
definitely looking for that woman who's like, oh my God, we had our best quarter ever, but oh my God, I feel so bad. I didn't make cupcakes. I forgot. Like, oh my God, like I haven't been out with my husband. There was this woman in our
Mhm.
group chat who was like, her husband was home from work and he was like, let's go for lunch. And she's like, I don't have time for lunch. I'm busy. And she was like so excited that she was busy. And she's like, don't give me that look, you know, where I would be like, I'm appealing to the woman who's like dying because she can't go for lunch with her husband.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's
No, I
kind
do.
of like,
I know both of these women. So
I've been both, like
I've
100%.
been both. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think there's
Depends
a
on the
like,
day. Depends on
yeah,
the day.
it does. And I think I don't want to give too much credit to external environment, but
Hmm.
it does depend. Like there are days where I feel like I have to have my hand in everything.
Yeah,
And then there's other days where I'm like, nah, you guys got it. I'm gonna go do what I want to do and
totally.
it'll
Yeah,
work out better for everybody, I promise.
exactly. Yeah,
So
it
what kind
depends.
of goals do you have over the next 6 months to a year?
So interesting. I love that. I am very, let me think, my goals. I, on a practical level, I'm going to finish my yoga teacher certification.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I have I love to dance, so I've like got a goal dance level of where I want to be as a dancer. Is a goal that I have. I want to. I speak Spanish, so I want to become a C-level speaking Spanish, like a level fluency level 1.
Mm-hmm.
I have goals in my business to. I have a revenue goal for my coaching business. But I don't know. I feel like as a person, like I'm very. I really, and this is something that has also helped me a lot, like with this, like my growth as a spiritual and the spiritual side is like to trust that I'll be guided
Mm-hmm.
to what's next. Like I can set these goals of I wanted this and this and this and this, but it's like one thing that I do every day is like I have my list of goals. Okay, so these revenue goals, my Spanish goal, my dancing goal, my fitness goal, my whatever goals, and it's like. And it's like I kind of like will think, I'll look at the goal and I'll be like, okay, what is my action for this today? And so I'll like trust I'll listen and I'll be given my action step for that day. Oh, you need to contact this person. You need to don't forget to call this person and sort of start coming to my mind and I make my task list. But then it's like if I'm reading my goal and it starts feeling wrong, I'll change my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll pivot my goal, right? If it doesn't feel aligned anymore, if it doesn't feel like I had this goal of wanting to go to Pilates and because I had this injury and I needed to rehab the injury and I felt really strongly, okay, I should do something like going to Pilates. And so I went to a couple classes and it was cool, it was fine, but then it kind of like it just kind of started falling off. Like I was like, no, I kept kind of like wanting to want that goal. And I was like, no, I'm gonna release that goal. It's okay. Like I just it stopped feeling like the right next step.
Right.
Right. So I'm just kind of learning how to trust that instead of forcing myself, go to Pilates. Like it's like, hey, no, maybe I could.
I think
What
it's
does feel
important.
right as part of my fitness goal? What does feel like the right thing? Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
need a fitness goal, but I had was I was dying thinking or not dying. I was like committed to Pilates is my path. But it's like, and then I stopped feeling like it started feeling bad, that
Mm-hmm.
goal. I don't know why. It doesn't matter why, but it's like, so I was like, okay, fitness goal is the same. Okay, what's my
Method.
fitness goal didn't change. Exactly. What's my approach? And so I think that's part of the fun part about being like they call it conscious entrepreneur is like, or conscious anything is like, you know your outcome, but the how really doesn't matter. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so that's what I mean. So I set revenue goals, but I'm like
Mm-hmm.
if it's fine, it's fine. I'm not like gonna die if it change, you know, if like
Right.
so no, it's an interesting question.
Well, I think it's interesting, and I've kind of been playing with it, not necessarily in a tactile kind of I've got a list, but
Mhm.
kind of developing spirituality and consciousness and really looking at more core, more
Mm.
internal goals.
Yeah,
Um, but I haven't really figured out a good method for like evolving them. So,
I have an interesting question for you then. This will might
okay.
help you.
Yeah,
Have you
bring
ever
it.
read the book Power versus Force?
No.
Okay.
I'll write that
Power
down.
versus Force. This is, I think, such an interesting book. It's a way to measure your consciousness.
That sounds fascinating. So you've read it.
I read it.
Tell me more.
And it talks about, okay, Jesus is a this.
Okay. So let's start with the unattainable.
The average person is a this. Like a Mother Teresa is a this. The average whatever is a this. And it's like this rating system, like a point system, where it's a fascinating book. It's like a heavy read, though. Obviously, it's like
Okay.
it was this system, this grading system created by this doctor, and so he is like you can literally measure your level of consciousness within this range. So you can set a goal. Like you could set a goal of having a consciousness level.
But I
So
don't know how I rank next. Well, I have some ideas, but
uh,
next to Mother Teresa, you know what I mean?
but it will tell you.
It's
I
like
think
I don't know
the
what
book
she
from my
thinks. I don't know what she, I know what she did and I know like her actions, but I don't know her thoughts. You know what I mean?
my book, I'll show you.
Okay.
So like it's okay. So it's called Power versus Force. Okay, who's the author? Like David Hawkins, I guess. David Hawkins.
Awesome.
Anyway, so they teach you, how do you know where you are? Like, how do you, like, for example, highest level of consciousness, you can perform miracles. Like,
Okay. Okay.
you
Cool.
can walk on water when you are at
Cool.
level of consciousness. But it kind of, it'll just say, like, it's been a while since I read this book, but it's like, it'll say, okay, if you're constantly living in a place of jealousy and fear, you're probably here.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely helps you like figure out
Where you're starting
are,
from.
and then you can see your next level, right? So it's like, so for example, it has this chart. I know for people listening to this, I won't be able to see it, but it has this chart. It's
A
like,
map of consciousness.
if you're like, exactly. So like, if you're like a 700 to 1000,
Oh,
you're
geez.
this.
Okay.
You're like a, so for example, level 20
Okay.
or 20 points or whatever it is, miserable, shame, humiliation, eliminate,
Oof. That's
like
heavy.
that's okay, a
That's yucky
low
feelings,
vibe.
right?
Yeah, low vibe. Where a 600 is peace, bliss, illumination, holistic thinking. So it's interesting. But yeah, if you're looking for an internal consciousness goal,
That might be, the book itself might be my next year goal.
it's like, oh
I mean, but
no, I read it. It
does
was
it give you tips and like this is how you move from here to here, or is it just kind of like, sorry, you're a bottom feeder and we're not going to talk to you anymore? Like you're going to have to reincarnate to something a little bit higher.
it's like, yeah, you were a bottom feeder, but no, it's like some of it's interesting because it's like, I think like internally, this is my belief is that I think internally, like, let's just say our next level would be, I don't know, I'm just kind of, let's say the next level up from you, where you would identify is like joy, oneness, serenity, transfiguration. So that's like the quote unquote criteria. I think if we were open to it and we were to say, look, setting this intention of this is my next level of growth, and we were to kind of like sit with it and be like, trust ourselves to be guided, I am positive. So I don't know if you meditate or anything like that, but like that's how our universe will speak to us, right? It's through a meditative, open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be guided to, and I think just the awareness of what your quote unquote next level is, it just makes you more aware of when you're off, and I don't know, it's fascinating, but yeah, read the book and then call me back.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to do this again. We're going to do this. I have a lot to do. I have homework tonight for human design. And then that's going to be a project. So I'm going to have to take some time through that one.
No, it's fascinating. It's
what else are you reading now? What do you, obviously you're into the human design, but what else are you reading and kind of growing with?
Like I said, I'm really learning about what it means to be psychic. And again, I always thought psychic was like communicate with dead people or like woo woo, like crystal ball stuff. So I'm really like deepening my understanding of psychicness. I don't know if that's a word. I'm writing a like I said, I'm doing a PhD right now, and my PhD is about yoga and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So how to create a mind that's like a joyful, harmonious mind through alternative treatment as opposed to antidepressants or whatever. Through and because I'm in my yoga program right now, I'm doing it with the vein of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading a lot about that.
Do you think, and this just kind of popped into my head, so I'm going to interrupt and I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
But do you think, and I've had this theory for a long time, that a lot of depression and a lot of frustration comes from people who refuse to open up their mind to the possibility that maybe they are getting psychic stuff, whether it's through dreams or intuitive thoughts or whatever, but because they're pushing it out, it's causing them stress and distress.
Interesting. I've never thought about that. I have many people in my circle who take antidepressants and things like that. And I think I have a dad who was severely mentally ill. So I'm saying this from a place of this was my life.
Right. And a place of love.
Like, yeah, I grew up from a place. My dad is like literally a sociopath, like not a murderer or anything, but he's not a good guy. So I grew up in this environment with someone who was very mentally ill. And I think that being around that, growing up with that, siblings who now we're all like kind of the fallout of that, the genetics of whatever that comes with, who knows? I think a lot of depression is, there's power in identifying as depressed. Like, in my opinion, and this has been something I've worked on my entire adult life, is to not fall into this trap of my genetic heritage, right? So I have worked tirelessly for alternative healing for mental health, right? So probably that's why I'm like so interested for my thesis, right? But I really believe that, and I don't want to say this because I don't want to get you in trouble for your podcast, but it's like, people get attention when they're depressed. People feel sorry for you when you're depressed. People, like, you can talk about how you're depressed. You can talk about the medication you're taking. You can talk about, oh, I didn't go out yesterday. I didn't work yesterday because I was depressed. And it's like, okay, yes, there is a position where someone is actually mentally, something's wrong. But I think we can, if it's not a mental illness diagnostic, something's really wrong with, like, mentally wrong, and it's more behavioral, cultural, sociological, I think that can be undone through being proactive in your health and your nutrition and your commitment to growth of consciousness and meditation and prayer and fresh air and positive relationships, But I think we just like to, I feel bad, I'm depressed. And it's like, yeah, well, what are you doing to fix it?
Right.
Like, you're not doing anything. Of course you're depressed. Like, you stay inside and watch TV. Of course you're depressed. Like, why don't we go for a walk in a beautiful, beautiful view and go for delicious sushi for lunch and laugh a lot? Like, you're going to feel better. You're not depressed.
Right.
Like, I don't know. That's my controversial opinion on.
I don't know that it's that controversial though. I mean, I would go even further and say that, where there's a market, there's a way. So, there is a market for pharmaceuticals. There is a market for, psychotherapists. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people fall into that because it's a sustainable model. Like it's almost like a subscription plan, right? Once you're in, you're in. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've been there. Like, when I was an insomniac, it was like, all you think about is taking these pills and going to never waking up again. Like, all you think about, because your life is in pieces. So I know what it feels like to feel depressed and sad and empty. And like, I know I'll never forget how that feels. But at some point I had to realize, you know what, I need to figure out how to sleep. So I started seeing doctors and medicine and therapy and sleep studies and yoga and changing my diet. Like, I had to like fix it. Or else I could have very easily been like, I'm depressed. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm depressed. Okay, yes, I'm depressed in this moment. But you know what? I can also be proactive.
Right. It's ownership. I think there's a lot of ownership in that. But
yeah, I know. And I know it's gray, right? Because I know some people are literally mentally ill, like my dad, like literally something's wrong. But I think a lot of people play that card when they have way more options than they're willing to admit.
I think you might be right. So not psychic ability, but definitely just a lack of choice.
I think it's like, I think we can block being psychic though, right? Like, I think if we're not listening and we are so stuck in our way of thinking about something, the ideas could come. Like, let's imagine someone's depressed and they're like, you know what? I really think, like for me, for example, when I was an insomniac, I love watching crime drama. I love CSI. I love the whole thing, like any of it. I'm all on board, right? And so to fall asleep, I would watch CSI on my phone in bed. And you're like, okay, there's a million things wrong with that. Like blue light, crime drama, putting that in your mind before you go to sleep, like stimulating visuals. Like, everyone will tell you no phones in bed. Everyone will tell you that. But I'm not listening. So for months, it was like, stop watching it. Turn off your phone. And I didn't do it. And then literally within 3 days of me uninstalling the app, getting a book, having some tea, reading before bed, it was better. Like, it wasn't gone, but it was better. And I was like, I've been getting that message for fucking months. Like, at some point it'd be like, you know what? No, you're not. Like, you're not listening to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would think there's truth to that. Like, you don't listen to your body's going to stop trying to talk to you,
To be
just
like,
like
I'm
anything
not
else.
listening. Yeah.
You
So
don't
stuff
feed
like
water to your plants aren't going to grow.
that. So I think it's like, I don't think the messages, I think it's how open are we to hear it, receive it, take action on it, I think is the big thing. Because I think a universe loves us and wants us to thrive and wants us to succeed and is going to try to communicate. But it's like, are we, to myself, are we so arrogant to think that we can not listen when we're looking for an answer? Like, I'm desperate to sleep, but I'm the one watching TV on my phone every night. Like that is not the will of a loving universal source. Like, it's like, no, we want you rested and happy and contributing and loving your babies and taking care of your body and travel. Like, no, like, but I'm the one who's not listening. So yeah, I don't know. I think we block it. I really think it's there.
I think there's a lot of blocks in the way of a lot of things. And we could probably spend another 7 or 8 hours uncovering some of those. But
sure.
I think it's just that acceptance and that ownership of the fact that maybe we don't have the answers, but we can find them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's that openness to the answers too. Is this is what I'm learning the most about psychic. And again, I know that's a loaded word, and I had to educate myself on what it means to be psychic. But it's like we have to. Part of yoga training, obviously, is a big piece of this. Is meditation, and how universe will communicate with us. Is it can't do it if we're busy. So we have to like sit, calm our mind, open our mind, be in a place of receptivity. And that is how we will get the download as an idea, as an intuitive hit, as a whatever it is, right? And oh my God, I totally just lost my train of thought. What did you ask me?
We were talking about psychic ability.
Psychics. Oh yeah, that's right. And it was saying like, so the more receptive you are, the more psychic you will be. Right? It's like you see these talk shows of these women or I shouldn't say women, people who go on a talk show and they'll like hold a box and they're like, in this box is a da 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 da, and they open it and they're right. Or they pull someone up from the audience and be like, your dad just died and he wants me to tell you that your keys are in the box, in the red box in the carport. And we're like, how is that possible? But it's like, if we believe that there is a source that does want to communicate and needs a channel, why is it not possible?
Right.
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 I don't know. I had this conversation with my son the other night and he was like, that's dumb.
That's because you're a baby. Do you ever dance in the dream space? Because I think the dream space is a prime opportunity to like learn about your abilities, but also the possibilities.
You know what? That was part of my, I'm doing the degree in metaphysics. And so part of the curriculum in metaphysics is dream interpretation.
We're going to have like 800 more conversations. Go on.
Anyway, so one of the modules in the metaphysics degree is dream interpretation. And to me, it was fascinating. And I know there's so many books, but to me, it wasn't something that really kind of caught my attention personally. But I know it's a big topic and a very valuable topic for someone who is willing to learn that. For sure. Yeah, it's fascinating.
But then you shifted into metaphysical spaces. And so like now I'm curious what you did like about that. Was there anything like when you start talking about like multi-dimensions and everything that's out there and all the things that we don't know, do you ever, I don't know. I think this is one of those where we need a bottle of wine and just sit down. Like, you know what I mean? Because totally I can take it in so many different directions, but it's one of the things that I'm so deeply fascinated by that I will almost jump into this conversation with complete strangers because I love the openness of it, the potential of it. The multiverse and the ability that every decision has another universe, it opens to, okay, well, how do you interpret reality then? How do you interpret this space that we're in? And how does that space become more real than another space? You know what I mean? Because we don't know.
It's bizarre. I know. That was the one thing as part of my Catholic deconditioning. So to any Catholics on the call, as soon as I stopped thinking like a Catholic person, my life started making more sense, honestly. And I read a lot of books about, and again, I'm very spiritual, believe in a God, but I'm not a religious person. Like I would say, yes, I went to Catholic schools. I was a missionary. I did the whole Catholic thing until I was like 25. And then I was like, only in the last couple of years have I been like, wait a second. Like this, it's not that the religion is wrong. I'm not saying the religion is anything wrong, but it's like, to me, this belief system is not serving me. So I like definitely went in a different direction. But no, I mean, I think there's so little that we know about anything. There is no one way. There is no one process. It's like, who's to say someone who's Muslim versus Catholic versus Hindu? Like, does anybody know? No, nobody knows.
Right.
Like, we like to think we know, but we don't know. Like, you're not God. Like,
Right.
so I don't know. I'm just very, yeah, I don't know. I believe in one source that loves you,
Mm-hmm.
that wants to see purpose of life is the purpose of life per this belief system,
Experience.
is experiences, expansion, love, creation, heaven, hell. Nobody, who knows? I
Yeah,
don't
who
know.
knows?
Who
No, I
knows?
agree. I agree.
I don't know, right? Like,
I grew up
it
Catholic
doesn't matter.
too, but I also very early was fascinated by all of the religions because I was so
Yeah,
fascinated by the Catholic faith. And so I
yeah,
wanted to understand why everybody believed what they believed. And I think it's just,
exactly.
again, in tunes to I want to know what people are thinking and why.
Yeah,
But I think it all comes back to like if that's your religion, your faith,
yeah,
it's not different, or it's not so different. Like
no,
I do believe that there is, one community and one,
yeah,
one, I guess, source.
yeah,
But I think that it does, whatever you want to call it to get you to that next place in your life,
mhm,
that's probably, just as validating,
yeah,
if
doesn't
it
matter.
works for you, it works for you.
Exactly. That's the question I think people don't ask, is they're just raised in a certain way of thinking and they never ask, is this working?
Hmm.
Like, never. I know tons of Catholics who their life is a train wreck. And it's like, well, it's a train wreck because you think this. You
Hmm.
think this way. Like, this is a terrible belief system.
You
Like,
carry a lot of weight with guilt.
yeah, like so many things. Or like the whole whatever. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but it's like, okay, does this belief system serve you? Religion, irrespective of, doesn't matter. It's like, does this path of thinking serve you? That there
Hmm.
is some sort of vindictive God that's counting your sins and holding it against you until you go to confession and don't expect anything good to happen if you've sinned in your life. It's like, this is not helpful.
Hmm.
Like, that is not a useful way of thinking. So I don't know. It's just stuff like that. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with it. Like,
Hmm.
maybe it's the truth and I am going to go to hell and whatever, and who knows, maybe, but it doesn't matter. In this life now, this is killing me. This way of thinking, of being paranoid every time I
Hmm.
turn around that I'm going to get struck with lightning because I sinned about something. Like, and maybe it's true and maybe it's happening and he's got the tally and it's not looking good, but I can't live like that anymore.
I
I
mean, we're
just
just going to go back to the book and find out how we rank next to Jesus, and then go figure out what our odds of getting into heaven are. I mean, I don't know either. I think
yeah,
the conversations are good though, because it does force you to consider more. It does force you to
yeah,
allow for the possibility, and it allows you to open that door so that you're not stuck in that space, right?
yeah. It just forces you to be like, yeah, and it's challenging. I read a couple books by this author who was like a Baptist pastor, and he was like, God is not Hindu, God is not Catholic, God is not anything. God is God. Like, God is not a religion. And so when I read that, it just blew my mind to realize, like, he's like, God is love.
Hmm.
Like, source, God, whatever you're gonna call it, whatever the word is, the word doesn't matter, right? But it's like, that is not, no one owns that.
Right.
So it was just so interesting to be like, you don't, like, does God like being the source of a war of kill this person and kill this person because you're not a
Right.
Muslim? Like, no.
What
Like,
parent loves to watch their children fight? I don't.
no,
I
exactly.
agree. I don't understand the dogma of that. I just,
No, me either. It just
yeah.
seems, it's so ungodlike, right? It's like I remember this book and it was like, is God schizophrenic? Like, okay, we have this like sinful, send the plague, send the flood over here, and oh, God is love and God wants,
Here's your rainbow.
yeah,
Whee!
exactly. No, and like, you cannot believe in both versions, like, and be mentally stable. It's not possible.
Right. Well, it's too humanizing. Like I don't
Yeah, no,
believe that the source of everything is is human. And if it is,
No,
then we've got big
not at all.
problems because humans are fickle, crazy
Humans are
creatures.
dumb.
God, no doubt.
I put my in the category.
But I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I
No,
think it does, like, it does offer the opportunity for, I don't know, again, growth. Like, it does give you the chance to evolve your spirit and evolve your thought process and evolve
yeah,
who you are when you question it. But when you go along passively, it's just religion should,
exactly.
faith should never be passive. I don't know.
Exactly. No,
I
totally.
don't know. But that's a whole
Like,
other
so
podcast.
interesting. I know. And we'll never know. We'll never know if we're right. Like, we'll
No,
never know. But it's
no.
like, how does it serve you in this life? Does it expand or constrict? And we
How
don't know
does
what
it feed your soul, though? That goes way back to the beginning of the conversation. And how are you
exactly.
treating your soul? How are you treating that part of
Yeah,
you that does not get to carry with you?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So if that's what matters, then you're going to choose very differently, right?
right.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I don't know. It's just metaphysics is fascinating to me. It's like, I don't know.
I'm a
And
little bit
again, with
jealous.
my day, I run a very practical,
I
technical.
know. I mean, it's fine. I
I'm a
think it's in that
technical
balance. The
project
balance is
manager.
really important. Like, there's parts of me that are very aggressive and very go get it. And there's other parts of me that are like, come, let's do flowers. And
I know, right? It's so interesting. I know. It's like,
dimension is good. We want dimension in humans.
exactly. I know. And I just think it shows a sign of someone who's like, to me, when I can have this conversation with something, it's like, it's courage to think outside the way most
Mhm.
people think. It's hard. And a lot of people might go down that road and turn back and be Catholic again. Fantastic. But you
That's
know what? You
fine.
have the courage to like think for yourself,
Mhm.
right? And you might think the whole thing's malarkey and you go back and it's okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's like to challenge your thinking and to allow yourself to think, consider and entertain new possibilities. It's like, it's hard for most
Right.
people because it's physically like you're literally neuroplasticity rewiring your brain. And your brain physically moving neurons is not an easy thing.
But it's so exciting. Like,
So, yeah.
I agree. I mean, again, I want to be aware of your time, but I could go
Like
on
5 more minutes.
forever because it is one of those things where it's so rare to be able to just jump into the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I'm terrible at surface level conversations. I have a really
Me
hard
too.
time at small
I
talk,
cannot.
but I do love to dive deeper because that's the only way that we all get to kind of get that moment. We all get to
Yeah.
like feel that energy and kind of see where it takes us.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. No, it's
But
true. It's hard to find people who can have that conversation for sure.
yeah, that's good stuff. That's good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's
We have to
fun.
do this again. We have to
I
do this
know. It's so
again
fun.
so
I
many
love
times.
it. Thanks for all the questions. It was a fantastic.
I'll be honest with you.
For
This did not go in a direction I thought it was going to go into, but I love every part of it. Yeah, and we definitely will do it again because this has been
well, per your
fantastic.
theme, I started my master's and my yoga training and human design all after I was 40. So my
Excellent.
spiritual awakening, let's say,
Yeah,
started when I was 40.
yeah. I finished my master's after I was 40. I had a baby after I was 40,
There
and
you go.
now I'm 50. So, we just
It
move on.
begins at 40.
It really
People.
does. I
It
think
does. It
there's so
really
much
does.
pressure on these 20-year-olds to figure out who they are at 20, and God help them. Like,
No,
I'm
no.
still trying to figure out who I am, and I'm 50. So, like,
I know.
break.
It's like my kids are like my son, my oldest is in grade 11, and he's like, "What should I do for university?" I'm like, "You know what? It doesn't really matter because you're going to change your career 7 times. So whatever your first thing is, it doesn't matter."
Yeah, just get it. Go through the
Something.
process of getting the thing, or
Yeah.
don't. Go
Don't
learn a
worry about
trade,
it.
do
This
a
is not
thing.
your life.
Travel is one of my favorite things because
Totally.
it breaks your brain. It puts you in a completely different experience,
Totally.
and you find out more about yourself. So,
I agree.
how is that different from school?
Yeah, I don't know. I know. Like, so I'm like, I'm very like indifferent as a parent. I'm like, live your life, dude. Like, whatever you pick, it doesn't matter. So you're gonna be something else in 10 years anyways. It doesn't makes no difference. Just pick something
Yeah,
if you
just
want
love.
to.
Be
Yeah,
loving.
whatever. Do
That's
your
all I
thing.
care about. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Natasha,
Hey,
I adore you. I'm going to put all of your links on the page and give everyone an opportunity to reach out to you. But for those people who are driving or doing whatever and listening, where do people find you?
So if you are a mom looking for business coaching or support, I feel like I've kind of scared everybody
I
with
know.
all my thoughts.
I want the whole kind of person if I'm looking for a coach.
Exactly. So if you are, I would just say for your audience of being women, I would say that my website is freeupyourtime.biz. And what I do is I have a coaching program where I help women, like I said, cut that workload in half without jeopardizing your income, hiring, system development, mindset, all that stuff. So I would say that would be the number one. And I'm always curious to meet interesting people. So if someone thought what I said was interesting and just wanted to chat, and like I love wellness, alternative health, like open to any conversation. So yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. So
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. We'll do this again. I promise.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Natasha. Have a wonderful weekend. It's beautiful. So yeah, definitely enjoy these last days of non-freezing temperatures.
It is raining in Vancouver, so I don't know.
Never mind.
Anyway,
Me thinking outside of my box.
Yeah,
Awesome,
great.
Natasha. Well, thank you so much. And definitely we'll have people reach out, and we'll have to definitely get back together again into this.
Thank you. I'd love to.